There is a quiet shift happening right now, and most people don't see it, not because it is hidden, but because it is silent. There are no protests in the streets, no dramatic announcements, no official statements. Instead, it is happening behind closed doors in small apartments, dimly lit rooms, and long late-night drives where a man sits alone with his thoughts. He is not angry in the way people expect. He is not loud. He is not violent. He is simply withdrawing, and that changes everything. Because when men stop fighting for their place in society, they don't explode outward. They disappear inward. And history shows that when enough men choose to walk away, the consequences reshape entire civilizations. Imagine the year 2030, not as some distant sci-fi fantasy, but as an extension of what is already unfolding today. The signs are already here. Millions of men are quietly disengaging from relationships, from marriage, from traditional ambition, and even from social participation itself. They are no longer chasing the same milestones their fathers and grandfathers once did. They are no longer convinced the rewards are worth the cost. And the most dangerous part is that nobody notices until it is too late, because disengagement does not announce itself. It simply leaves an absence where presence used to be. At first, it looks like freedom. A man no longer feels pressure to prove himself. He stops competing. He stops chasing approval. He stops sacrificing himself for systems that he believes no longer value him. He spends more time alone, more time in his own world, more time in digital spaces where he feels control. And for the first time, he feels peace. But this peace comes with a hidden price, because while he may escape rejection, he also escapes growth. While he may avoid humiliation, he also avoids meaning. And slowly, without realizing it, he becomes invisible, not just to others, but to himself. By 2030, this quiet withdrawal begins to create visible fractures in society. Fewer men are willing to take on responsibility. Fewer men are building families. Fewer men are willing to sacrifice comfort for purpose. Entire industries begin to notice the absence. Birth rates continue to decline, not because people cannot reproduce, but because fewer men believe in the future enough to create one. Relationships become increasingly unstable, not because of conflict, but because of indifference. Indifference becomes the defining emotional state of a generation. But this is not just about relationships. It is about identity. For most of human history, a man's identity was tied to his role. He was a builder, a protector, a provider, a creator of order in chaos. His suffering had meaning because it served something beyond himself. But when society removes the meaning from sacrifice, sacrifice disappears. And when sacrifice disappears, purpose disappears with it. By 2030, millions of men are no longer asking, "What must I do?" They are asking, "Why should I care?" And when a man stops caring, he becomes unpredictable in a different way. Not dangerous, but detached. He no longer invests emotionally in outcomes. He no longer feels urgency. He no longer feels responsibility for things beyond his immediate survival and comfort. He becomes psychologically independent from systems that once relied on his participation. And systems that depend on participation begin to weaken. This creates a paradox. Society continues to function on the surface. Cities remain busy. Technology continues advancing. People continue living their lives. But underneath, something essential is missing. The invisible psychological infrastructure built by engaged men begins to erode. The willingness to endure hardship for long-term gain declines. The willingness to commit declines. The willingness to protect declines. And these changes do not appear dramatic at first. They appear as small inconveniences, small delays, small inefficiencies, small breakdowns in trust. Because trust is built on reliability, and reliability is built on commitment, and commitment is built on belief. When belief disappears, commitment disappears, and when commitment disappears, trust eventually follows. By 2030, many men have adapted to a new philosophy, one built not on conquest but on avoidance. Instead of pursuing meaning through struggle, they pursue comfort through disengagement. Instead of risking rejection, they avoid situations where rejection is possible. Instead of building external validation, They construct internal worlds where they control the rules. Video games, digital communities, private routines, isolated hobbies. These environments offer something the real world increasingly does not: predictability, fairness, control. In these controlled worlds, effort leads to reward, progress is measurable, identity is earned, respect is clear. But in the real world, many men feel effort leads to uncertainty, progress feels arbitrary, respect feels conditional, and so they choose the environment that rewards their psychology rather than punishes it. This shift is not driven by weakness. It is driven by adaptation. The human brain is designed to move toward reward and away from pain. When the perceived pain of participation outweighs the perceived reward, withdrawal becomes logical. It becomes rational. It becomes inevitable. And yet something deeper is happening beneath the logic, because every man carries an ancient psychological blueprint, a blueprint built over thousands of years, a blueprint designed for challenge, for struggle, for proving oneself against resistance. When this blueprint has no outlet, it does not disappear. It becomes suppressed, and suppressed energy does not vanish. It transforms. Some men transform it into creativity. Some transform it into discipline. Some transform it into solitude, but many transform it into numbness. Emotional flatness becomes the defense mechanism of a generation. They are not depressed in the traditional sense. They simply feel less excitement, less passion, less urgency, less desire. By 2030, this emotional flatness becomes normalized. Entire communities of men exist without deep emotional engagement. They function, they survive, they even appear calm. But inside, they have detached from the idea that their actions shape the future in meaningful ways. They live in the present not because they are mindful, but because they no longer believe in long-term narratives. And this changes how society evolves. Because civilizations are built by men who believe their suffering creates something greater than themselves. When that belief disappears, creation slows. Innovation becomes driven more by machines than by human obsession. Progress becomes incremental rather than revolutionary. But the most profound change is not external, it is internal. Because when a man walks away from society, he does not just leave society behind. He leaves behind the version of himself that only exists through resistance. Struggle shapes identity. Challenge reveals capability. Without these forces, identity becomes undefined. And an undefined man becomes invisible. Not invisible physically, but psychologically. He moves through the world without leaving impact. He avoids conflict. He avoids leadership. He avoids responsibility. He becomes an observer rather than a participant. And while this protects him from pain, it also protects him from meaning. By 2030, millions of men have become observers of their own lives, watching rather than acting, consuming rather than creating, existing rather than building. And society begins to feel different, not broken, but hollow. Because the energy that once drove expansion has been replaced by the desire for stability. The hunger to conquer has been replaced by the desire to avoid loss. The fire that once defined masculinity has been replaced by quiet endurance. But here is the truth few people understand. Men do not walk away because they are incapable. They walk away because they no longer believe the game is worth playing. They no longer trust the reward structure. They no longer see a future where their sacrifice leads to fulfillment. And belief is the foundation of all human action. Without belief, motivation collapses. Without motivation, participation collapses. Without participation, systems collapse slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. But something else happens too. Because not all men walk away. Some men watch this withdrawal and feel something different. They feel clarity. They see the absence of competition. They see the vacuum forming. And they understand something most people do not. Vacuum creates opportunity. By 2030, a small percentage of men become more powerful than ever before. Because while millions withdraw, they advance. While millions disengage, they engage. While millions avoid struggle, they seek it. And this creates a new psychological divide, not between rich and poor, not between educated and uneducated, but between engaged and disengaged. The engaged men become the architects of the future, not because they are superior, but because they remain present. They remain willing to endure discomfort. They remain willing to take risks. They remain willing to build. And in a world where most avoid responsibility, the few who accept it become disproportionately influential. This is the hidden law of human dynamics. Power flows to those who remain when others leave. By 2030, this law becomes visible everywhere. Leadership positions are filled by fewer individuals willing to carry heavier burdens. Innovation is driven by fewer minds willing to obsess over problems. Stability is maintained by fewer shoulders willing to carry weight. And the men who once walked away begin to see something unexpected. They see the cost of absence. Because absence does not just remove pain, it removes possibility. They see others building lives they never attempted. They see others creating meaning they never pursued. And they realize that walking away protected them from failure, but it also protected them from victory. And in that realization, something begins to awaken. Because the masculine psyche is not designed for permanent retreat, it is designed for return. Return to challenge. Return to purpose. Return to meaning. The year 2030 is not the end of men, it is the crossroads. It is the moment where every man must confront a question he can no longer avoid. Will he remain an observer, safe but invisible? Or will he step forward, uncertain but alive? Because the future does not belong to the strongest. It belongs to the ones who refuse to disappear. And right now, in silence, the decision is already being made.